I'm Esther Dillard on the Black Information Network, chatting with writers and authors who offer an added perspective for our listeners. This is Color Between the Lines. Joining me on this edition of Color Between the Lines is actress, author, and activist Holly Robinson Peete. She just released a new book called Charlie Makes a Splash. This is a companion to her award-winning book, My Brother Charlie. The book was co-written with her son, RJ, who is diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. He's now 24 years old. She and her son share awareness about autism and other kids, who have also been touched by this in some way. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Holly Robinson Peete to the BIN.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. I've been a fan of you for years, especially after you started advocating for kids with autism when your son was little. That was about 20 years ago, and I had no idea that I would have my own journey with autism later on in life that would happen after my son was diagnosed around 3 years old. So I read up all about you before I even had this opportunity to talk to you today, and I know a lot of people who have children diagnosed with autism with various disabilities that are not as vocal about their struggle because often it's very difficult. I know you've explained it before at other times, but can you explain to our audience why you chose to make your struggle so public?
You know, when we got the diagnosis when RJ was 3, I already kind of knew there was something going on from the time he was 2. It took us almost a year just to get the diagnosis. And that was partially because both my pediatrician and my husband were steeped in denial about RJ being the boy twin who developed slower and don't compare him to his sister. But I knew I had that mommy gut screaming at me, and I knew. And still to this day, I still, can you imagine, he's almost 25 and I'm still beating myself up for that year of intervention that I didn't take advantage of. The conversation was kind of like this. We have a platform to share our story with other people because we're not seeing any advocacy out there in any real meaningful way. We know there are some families impacted by autism that are celebrities, and it's not everybody's place, as you alluded to have that conversation.
Right.
Not everybody can do that, and my husband included. He did not want RJ to be the poster child for autism. He felt like it was unfair to him at 3 years old to slap that label on him and then him carry that for the rest of his life. And I said to that, yes, but what if by sharing his story, we're able to help other families feel seen and maybe normalize neurodiversity and maybe advocate for other families who don't have a voice, et cetera, et cetera. And so I won that argument because, I win all the arguments in the house. That's just the way that goes. 28 years, that's the way that goes. That's why we're still together, because he lets me win. But seriously, it was so important to do that. And I'm just so happy, 20 years later, to look up and see what the advocacy has meant to so many people and really has meant for us cathartically.
Did you get a lot of people that reached out to you from the Black community? Because, often when you look out and you do your research, having Black voices to speak out about this, you don't see a lot of them. Did you find?
You don't?
Yeah.
Yeah. We heard that from so many families, and we know there's a cultural sort of disconnect with mental health, with autism, with so many things. We travel the country talking to churches and community groups because so often there are kids that are undiagnosed, and then when they're undiagnosed, they miss that intervention window, and then they're ill prepared for the world, to navigate the world. So we knew that as a Black family, to get out there, to talk about this openly and honestly and transparently, that we would be able to open the door for others. And that was really key. That was also part of my my pro list, was like, we're a Black family, honey. Like we have the opportunity to do this in a way that can really help some families open this discussion. And so it was important, and we have gotten such great feedback over the years. We've gone places where we've had people walk up to us and say, my family didn't told me that, there was no such thing as autism, and they just need to be disciplined more, and, and a lot of the stuff that, but quite frankly, we heard in our own family.
Yeah,
So
I was going to ask you about that. I wondered if, you got a lot of pushback from your mom and from, his mom.
Well, my mom was like sleeves rolled up, had all the books. Like, she was the super autism grandmother. Like, she wasn't playing. But on some other areas of our family, extended family on both sides, there just was a lack of understanding about what it was. And the thought that, you could discipline it out of them, which of course is completely false.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very glad that you're able to at least share that. And because it needs to be said, and a lot of Black families need to hear that from someone else who looks like them, that has gone through this situation. I want to go to your book because I thought it was such a really good one. How did you and your son, I guess, decide that you would write this book?
Well, I wrote a book with his twin sister, with my daughter, Ryan, about 12 years ago, called My Brother Charlie. And Charlie Makes a Splash is the companion title for my brother Charlie. My Brother Charlie was about autism awareness from a sibling's point of view, how a little girl advocates for her twin brother. And it was a beautiful book. It still is amazing, and won awards and really spread awareness. But really what got me was when we were talking about doing the follow-up to it, and RJ asked to have his voice included. He said, you always hear about people with autism, but you never hear from them. Oh. And I was like, okay, hold on. Like, that was deep to me. And I said, yeah, you're absolutely right, son. And you should be a co-author on this book. And that's how that happened. And it's just great because his voice gets to be heard. He can advocate for himself. And it's an opportunity to spread autism acceptance, which I think is something that we still haven't quite gotten to yet.
Yeah. Can you talk about how that character in your book, Charlie, has a focus on water, and why you chose this as one of the things to highlight in the book?
Well, when RJ was 3 and he was finally diagnosed at 3, he couldn't really make friends, couldn't parallel play alongside his typical peers. Even his twin sister, he would just kind of look through her, and he just was socially disconnected. But what I found was, we had a pool, and I knew that I wanted to make sure that they were pool safe. Mm-hmm. So we were part of this swimming group of like 2, 3, and 4-year-olds. And, everybody comes over to the house, and these kids were crying and screaming. I mean, we did have oh my gosh, Conrad, our dreadlocked swim instructor, he was kind of gangster. He used to just drop them in the water, and it was like hard for us parents, right, to handle that. But Conrad was gangster with it. But you know what? The cool thing was, when RJ jumped in that pool, all the other kids were crying and, just traumatized by figuring this swimming thing out. And RJ was like a guppy. Oh, wow. I mean, he fell in that water and he swam. So there's something about water around a child's body with autism that can feel so good and safe. There's something about the noise underneath the water and the way that their bodies respond sensorially. And RJ was anything that had to do with water, whether it was raining and jumping in puddles, whether it was the aquarium or scuba diving, he loves. So just being under the water, in the water, was calming for him. Mm-hmm. And so we thought for our follow-up to My Brother Charlie, we thought Charlie Makes a Splash would be great in inspecting how water is something that really helps him and sets him free. Mm-hmm. And then we knew that, a lot of children with autism tend to, when they wander away, which happens a lot, yes, they tend to gravitate towards water if there's a body of water nearby, and that can be a problem. So we also want to advocate for swim classes for kids on the spectrum. And in the back of Charlie Makes a Splash, I'm so proud of the fact that there's a lot of resources for parents, something that I didn't have back in 2000.
That's really good. And I saw that in the back, and I was really impressed by all of that. And that is really a good idea to put that in the back of the book so people can do research on their own if they want. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Esther Dillard speaking with Holly Robinson Peete about her new children's book, Charlie Makes a Splash. And she's talking about how she put it together and some of the things that she went through when it came to her son, RJ's diagnosis with autism. Now, in the book, you highlight what you call the year of no. And I remember seeing this in your special that is streamed, I think, on Amazon now, or Peacock, I think. But you have your whole special on your family, and you talk about that. Can you explain what was the year of no, and why did you highlight it in the book?
Yeah, so we called it actually we actually called it the never day. So it was a day where we were told he would never do a laundry list of things. So when you first get this diagnosis of autism, it's jarring to a family, right? It's not something you were expecting. You don't know how to process it. We were rookie parents at the time with new twins. I knew, like I told you earlier, that when he was 2 years old, I knew that there was something going on. And there was a lot of denial happening. So sometimes parents can't even get the diagnosis for lack of access to it, or cost or resources issues. So that's always really kind of difficult. But then on top of all that, the developmental pediatrician ran down this list of all these things that RJ would never do. Now, the boy's not but 3 years old, and you're already telling me that he'll never live on his own, never get married, never have meaningful employment, never drive. It just went on and on. Never say I love you. If he never says I love you, you have to understand that deep inside he does. It was just the worst day. And in some ways, it really fueled us. I mean, even to this day, that was 21, 22 years ago. And RJ now has, a very meaningful job working for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And there's moments where we just stop, and and he'll be walking out to his car to drive to work. And I'll be like, hey, remember when that lady said you would never drive to a meaningful job? And he would just say, yeah, Mom, that lady was wrong. So that's kind of like a little mantra that we have. Yeah. But in the end, it's about providing hope to families. And we want it to be a beacon of hope. But also, not every kid is going to have the outcome that RJ has. A lot of children RJ's age, young adults, are still nonverbal, but there's so many ways they can communicate, and they have a lot to say.
Wow. You are inspiring. What do you hope that, I guess, children and adults come away with after reading this book, other than hope? I think hope is the main thing, though.
Hope and acceptance. So when you get to kids early on, and they read about autism and it destigmatizes it, it's a good thing, because a lot of times they get a lot of that from their parents, different generation. Again, we talked about some cultural issues in the community where we don't talk about autism enough, or we don't understand it, so it scares us. So I want to demystify, to show that Charlie is a great kid who just processes the world differently. And guess what? When you sort of learn to swim in his world, you can learn more about yourself. And those are the kinds of themes that we would like to get through. And then again, as I mentioned, the resource guide in the back, because when it came to getting our diagnosis, we didn't have that Welcome to Autism handbook, if you will.
Yeah.
So we really, truly wanted to get the awareness out to families so that they understood that they're not alone, they're seen. And by the way, here are a bunch of things I wish somebody had told me.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that, because I think that a lot of parents need that. And I was one of those parents where I was just doing all the kind of research that I could to find out what to do next. What do I do next? And I really appreciate that. And I'm sure that other parents will too. If anyone wants to, I guess, find your book or participate in your upcoming projects that you're leading the way on, how do they get more information?
Well, the best way, I'm everywhere on social media, all across platforms at Holly R. Peete, HOLLYRO. Sorry, can't even spell. HOLLYRPEETE. And at hollyrod.org, HOLLYROD. Like Holly and Rodney. That we have information about our philanthropy, the work that we do. And then the book is just everywhere. Like, it's across all platforms. So if you put Charlie Makes a Splash in your search engine, you'll get many opportunities to order it. And if you don't have My Brother Charlie, the companion piece, that's a great way to sort of incorporate the sibling piece, because siblings oftentimes don't feel like they don't get, the attention. They're not the squeaky wheel. You're running around all these interventions and therapies and stuff for your kid with autism. And then what about the siblings? So they feel some kind of way. My daughter has let me know that in no uncertain terms. And so that's a great way to sort of introduce young kids to what it is. And in some ways, even for your child with autism, I've had many people ask me or tell me that they used one of our books to just explain to the child what autism was, to the affected child. So that's powerful. And if we can provide that, that's great, because again, something we did not see, Esther, when we went to go look in libraries and bookstores, we did not see these types of books in any kind of mainstream publisher. So very excited to be able to provide that.
And a person of color on top.
And that part. Like to have two little Black kids.
Yeah.
Listen, when I saw these illustrations and the little girl had those Afro puffs and that little braid beads, I said, "Oh my gosh!" It's like, so because representation is everything, right?
Yes,
we see ourselves, we can be it. We feel connectivity to it.
All right. Any books or projects coming up new that we should know about?
Well, I have a project coming up in early next year, not sure of the air date yet, called Queen's Court. Rodney, my husband and I are hosting a dating show. We're gonna find love. We're gonna find love for some folks and their 40s. Usually you see these dating shows and it's like, hard body 20-year-olds, but when you get to be 40, you've gone through some things in your life. It's kind of interesting. So we kind of serve as mentors and hosts. So we're excited about that. And then I'll head off next week to shoot my newest Christmas movie on Hallmark Channel, which I'm very excited about because there's a Kwanzaa theme, and that's something we haven't seen in a while. And we celebrated Kwanzaa a lot when the kids were little. So very excited about that too.
Oh my God. So again, thank you for sharing with us about your new book on the BIN. And I really hope you come back and share with us on your next new project, because that is exciting.
I will.
All right, that's Holly Robinson Peete talking about her newly released book, Charlie Makes a Splash. That's it for this edition of Color Between the Lines. I'm Esther Dillard on the Black Information Network.